Hey there, listeners, and welcome to Project Zero, where we hear the journeys of some of the best project leaders in the game. My name is Alex Tuck, and I'm the host. I am here with author and host of podcast PM Mastery, Walt Sparling. Welcome to the podcast, Walt.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Yeah, I can't wait to hear about your Project Zero. I bet you there's a good one in there.
No, I got a good one to share.
Awesome, cool. Why don't we start off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you do.
All right. So I am a senior project manager with a international real estate company. I act as an owner's rep. So I sit between the contractors and the owner, and we represent the owner's interest. I've been doing this for about 8 years. And prior to that, I did mostly design. I spent about 30 years on the design side, doing architectural, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. So I've got a good building background. I got my first official project management title when I was working for an architect as an architectural project manager, where I got to manage some projects. Some were ground up, some were renovation. So that was my official. And total, I've probably done 15 years as officially titled PM. And I'm sure before that, I did a lot of PMing, just didn't have the title. Right now, I'm working on a massive $200 million project, which is the biggest I've ever been involved in. And it's 3 year long. So it's really interesting.
That's awesome. And you've written a book or two, right? Tell us a little bit
I've
about that.
been a co-author on a book, Executing Excellence, that was put out by John Connolly. There was myself and 9 other project managers that participated in that. And I'm actually working on my own solo book right now.
That's awesome. I actually had John on the pod maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
was
really.
just on mine. I just published his actually.
That's awesome. That's so cool. We've all been making the circuit, huh? So take us back to when you did get that first official project manager role. Tell us how you got into that to begin with.
For years, I did mechanical design, and I was going to school for mechanical engineering. I wanted to be an architect, but I got sidetracked into the mechanical world. And while I was doing that, I got to a point where I was going to school full time, working weekends, and I would mess around with computers. And I started over a couple years, I started a computer company, and I actually left the mechanical world, went out and did that for a while. That led to, I think, 6 years of building computers and helping people with networking for architects and engineers was our focus. And then we hit an economic downturn. I had to let someone go. Someone else got a little nervous. They left. All the contracts that we were vying for all came in, and it was just me. So I just decided this wasn't going to work. And I sold the company to a friend of mine, someone who I actually was competing with, and went to work for a client as an IT manager. Did that for 6 years, got burnt out doing that, and really missed the architectural side that I wanted to do when I first, went to college. So a client that I did some IT work for offered me a position as a project manager. And he said, I know you're not a project manager, but he goes, I've worked with you over the years. I know how you think, how you work. I feel confident that this will work out. And it did. So that was my first official title. And then over the years, I always had a designer slash PM. I was never just a PM until I got into my current role.
Interesting. So yeah, that designer to PM role move is really interesting. I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast are really wanting to hear all the different arcs. And it's what's so cool
Oh,
about
yeah.
project management is if you've got the people skills, right? You can move into it. You can learn the organizational stuff, the technical stuff on the project management side. How do you work with the people that you're managing there? So
And I
that's
just had
cool.
this conversation with someone recently, and I think that was kind of the deal where people start out into a field like design, then they become
Mhm.
like an SME, and then they become a project manager. And sometimes they're still doing whatever that other role was, the design portion, but they're considered the one who can not only do it, but manage the process, manage the people, make sure the meetings get done, the notes get done, all that. So there's more to it than just that individual task. that you're good at.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about AI later, but that's something that as I run a project management consulting firm, 80% of our work just went away, right, overnight with AI. It's still not completely replaced yet because it's not very good yet at everything, but how do you add more value than just doing the meeting notes and making sure those go out and stuff like that? Because that's going to be gone. I think people that either come from a design background, engineering background, I think they're going to thrive as project managers within these functional teams.
I've seen a lot of people make that transition.
Is organization a natural part of who you are as an individual? As a kid, were you organized or did you learn that?
Yeah, that's always been a thing, no matter what job I was in. And I wrote a little bit about this on my website, but when I was a designer or a drafter or even a technical guy, I was always organizing folder structures and processes and how to do things quicker. It just became something I was really good at. Every time I'd go to a company, I'd start out new. And then once they realized that I could do all these things, I would grow really fast in the company and get promotions and all that. So I learned a lot because there was a lot of support once they found out you could do it. And I'm always been like that. I'm a little OCD.
Mhm.
So that, part of the organizational thing, I wouldn't say I'm over the top, but
Yeah.
you know,
So when you started and you got this PM role, the person that hired you acknowledged that maybe you didn't have that background, but he saw the possibility, the potential in you. When was it that you actually got like real PM training and went and got your PMP?
many, many years later.
Okay.
So I think part of it back then, the project manager meant you could do more than just draw or just design. You could lead meetings, you could organize meetings, you could create schedules, notes. You thought beyond just your individual task. It was probably, hmm, that's some years, probably 10 years later when I was working for an electrical engineering firm and I knew he had plans to sell the business and I was older and I was like, I really do not want to go back into getting on with another design firm. I'd been in the same area for years. I've been here ever since I was 19, a lot of years.
Mhm.
So I know a lot of companies know me. Plus I used to do consulting for a lot of these. So it wouldn't have been hard to find a job, but it's like starting over every time, learning all their new policies and procedures. And then you come in as an older person. I just didn't want to go that route. So I decided I wanted to pursue, actually, what got me is I was at a meeting and because of my past experience in all these different areas, I would always make suggestions. And, the clients would like that. Oh, that's interesting coming from an electrical guy talking about how you should do something mechanically or architecturally.
Mhm.
But I was in a meeting one time and there was an owner's rep and saw what he was doing. He was pretty knowledgeable and organized. And I was like, well, who do you work for? What do you do exactly? And he told me, and I'm like, wow, that's something I think I could do. He was a project manager for, I can't remember the name of the firm. They're still around, pretty established firm. So I started looking into it and decided I wanted to get serious about it. But if I'm going to do that, I need to get some kind of formal PM education. Organization was always there, communication was there, but I didn't know about the 5 process groups or phases as different people call them. So I signed up for a PMI's course and went through book 5
Mhm.
and got right near the end and took the test. I failed it. I didn't pass it. I just barely missed it. But
Uh,
I'm like, all right, I see the areas I didn't do well in, so I'll go back and take it again. But now it was on version 6. I didn't really want to start over. I did some research and there was some decent differences. So I took a boot camp for the transition from 5 to 6. And then I took the 6 and I passed. It was official, but I learned a lot in that process, going through the PMBOK guide and how they approach projects and the theory. And of course, I was pretty much a newbie back then.
mhm.
So now I look at PMI and PMBOK a whole lot different than what I did then, because now I've been running projects for years and it's great theory and there's great practice you can get from it. But you go to firms, nobody follows that exact
No.
process. Everybody's got their own way. There's some similarities. I haven't been anywhere where they didn't initiate, plan, execute, monitor, and control and close to some level. And they might have even called it something different, but that
Sure.
is a standard kind of sequence.
For sure. Especially in the real estate business where if you're doing any kind of building or any of that kind of stuff, engineering, that PMI structure is really helpful. If you're coming in new, it's very helpful. Could be argued that it's not as helpful for a small business that's doing a small IT project, but still helpful. The framework is good because it gives you the fundamentals and then you can do with it what you want.
You can adapt it. I mean, you're
Yeah.
not going to
Yeah.
do 42 processes in this group and 39 in this. The idea is there, the concept, make it work for whatever it is you're doing.
Cool. Well, now that we have that foundation, I'd love to hear a little bit about your Project Zero. So, for all the listeners, Project Zero is that first project where things clicked for you as a PM. What was that for you?
I've thought about this and it's because I've heard some of the other interviewees on their Project Zero. And for me, it was maybe not just how when it clicked, but when it all kind of came together with all the different things I'd learned. And then in the formal education, because I had already been studying for my PMP part of that, but I got my first ground up project. And I had done a bunch of small projects when I started with the firm to, test the waters. How good am I at doing different things? And because I was brought in as a senior PM, they were only going to assign me big projects. And I got my first ground up operations center for a utility. It was a $12 million project, which I think the biggest one I'd done before that was about 750,000. So it was a challenge, but I got to learn a lot about vendor relationships on a much bigger level because on a $12 million versus, a 750 or 500, you might have a single vendor. On here, there were multiple vendors and architects, and it was mind boggling the amount of record keeping that you had to do and the meetings that you had to hold, issues that you had to resolve. That project was about a year and a half and it rolled right into another smaller 2 million on the same site to do the site work for this building. I know when I would go back and visit there, I eventually went from a senior project manager to eventually the team lead and then the regional lead. So I had a team of PMs at that point. And we would go to different sites to look at stuff. And it was always, oh, there's Walt's building. Yeah.
Ah,
I had my own building. It was fun. It was exciting. I learned a lot. And I used that also, working with other PMs. I know you're struggling with this, but I did the same thing on my project. And this is how I worked through it. And, it was a great teaching experience.
So, what was the biggest gotcha that you experienced there? The biggest hurdle you had to overcome?
We worked with some pretty big players in national companies and understanding how they did things. They almost had, I wouldn't say a chip on their shoulder, but they were like, hey, we're the big player here and we don't really care who you are. Having conversations with them was a little challenging at first because they're used to dealing with different organizations, bigger organizations. I was pretty new. I think I'd only been there like 2.5 years. So that was tough understanding, I think from a PM perspective, the difference between influence and being in charge. Because, there's times where you think, well, wait a minute, this is my project. I'm the PM. Why are you not listening? And it's like, well, you're not really in charge. You're leading this project. What you should be doing is leading, but it doesn't mean you're in charge. So learning how to deal with the vendors and the customer was eye opening, especially when you're dealing with, $12 million of their money and having to do weekly PowerPoints and status reports and how many meetings a week was crazy.
Oh my
I think the sheer volume of the work involved in that one project really gave me a different perspective.
Oh, yeah. Managing vendors, it's so fascinating because especially when you're the small guy in the pond. I was just
Mhm.
having this conversation last night at our local PMI event, and I was talking with the buyer from this startup aviation firm here, and there's only 20 companies in the entire world that make some of the stuff that they're dealing with. So even though they're the vendor, you still have to suck up to the vendor to make sure that
Mhm.
they are happy. You would never think that, especially if you've only worked on a small project, you would never have that experience at all.
I remember one of the interesting things that happened is this vendor was large. They had 18 offices around the country, and they had this new product they were doing. And the leadership within the company that I worked for was really wanting to work with these guys. They were really hoping that that would all work out with the leveling and everything. They would get chosen. Well, they did get chosen at the end, and they did a factory tour, which I didn't get to go on, but the leadership from the company went, and then they had some other people go, and they all took this tour out west, flew out there for a day, came back. I'm like, "Well, I'm the PM. Why didn't I get to go?" So then the first meeting we had, I said, "All right, so I heard a lot about this technology that you have, and everybody here, or half the people here and people that aren't even here, flew out to your factory and looked at it. How are you going to utilize that here?" "Oh, that doesn't work for this type of project." "How much did we just spend flying people out to your factory, and everybody was so impressed they couldn't wait to work with you, and now we're not even getting."
Oh my
I was
gosh.
like, wow.
Yeah. Unfortunately, that is a common story. It's definitely not the exception. When you were starting out as a PM in this project, did you have any mentors there that were able to help you work through the project management processes, or were you making stuff up and Googling as you went?
It was a mix. There was a leader that was in the Midwest, so I'm in Florida, and when I came in, they told me they were looking for a senior person, and I didn't feel like I'd really been doing project management enough to be hired as a senior. But one of the employees there I had worked with for years, and she's like, "Stop it. Just send your resume. Trust me." And I did, and I got the role. And then once I was there a couple of weeks, some of the leaders got together and said, "All right, so here's our plan for you. And we have a lot of silos going on here. People are working with each other. We need you to bring the team together." Oh, okay. Sure. So that's what my focus was, in trying to get to know these PMs and follow them, doing shadowing, learn how they did their processes, they were talking about stuff I'd never heard of before.
Sure.
Oh, wow, I've never done that. Doing financial forecasting and risk registers. Oh, I've heard of risk, but I've never actually seen one in practice, risk register. So I was learning a lot, and then trying to be cool because I knew at some point it was my job to somehow bring all these people together. It worked out. It took a little while and built relationships, but I would lean on this leader from the Midwest, and we'd have chats and, "What are you struggling with?" He'd been with the company for many years, so he knew kind of the ins and outs, the politics, the people. So he was, and to this day, a good friend of mine. We touch base every once in a while.
It's so helpful to have that. Frankly, a lot of people that I talk to about their project zero, they're all like, I had nobody. I was
Mhm.
Googling every single thing, like risk register. Okay, let me get a template off of the website. But I had an amazing mentor, multiple mentors that helped me through the process of my first project zero. And oh my goodness, I learned so much. I was so just like you, it's not that we weren't qualified. It was just that we were challenged in a way that exceeded our previous experience. It
Mm.
wasn't that we didn't have the talent, it was that we didn't have the experience. And so even having someone that you can lean on, outside of the company or outside of the project sometimes is a great crutch to help you
Oh,
accelerate.
yeah. It was very interesting because none of my other friends did project management. They were all in the design world too. And it was, okay, I'm on my own here. Oh, except for the one friend I had that worked there, who I had worked with her at a couple other firms. But she had a completely different management style than I did.
Okay.
And, when I thought she might get upset when I ended up taking over the team, and she was like, "No," she had worked for me on another team. She's like, "No, I fully expected it would happen. So I'm good with it." So, but she was very different in her style, but she was really good. You don't have to be all cut the same.
That's right. In fact, at my firm, we break it into 5 different types of PMs. It's hard to describe it, but there's different types of folks that are like some are very stern, do really well in a state government position or something like that. And others are really good with startups. And so you have to think about all the different skill sets that you need for those different clients. Big difference.
Yeah. I live in a lot of gray. I'm used to figuring out how to compromise,
Yeah.
work things out. And this PM was black and white. It's
Yeah.
this way or it's not.
All right, let's shift gears and go into a little bit of like advice and thinking about the future. You've been a project manager now, you've been a de facto project manager before that. What do you think that number one skill is for a project manager? What does a PM definitely have to be
Well,
successful?
it, for those that follow me or know me, they know what I'm going to say, and it's communications. I've done a course on it. I wrote a chapter on it in the book Executing Excellence. I preach on it a lot. The skill, no matter what your personality is, whether you're kind of got a little edge to you or you're humorous or whatever, being able to communicate with a variety of different people to me is what makes projects successful. And it's not just having a conversation with someone, it's how do you do your correspondence? How do you track your project statuses and share them? That's a form of communication. It's just a written form, but you're communicating with your client or your vendor. I'm a very visual person. I use Snagit like 50% of the day. I'm always doing stuff because I want to visually show. I don't want any misunderstandings. So I'm like that with how I write stuff, how I show stuff, how I present stuff. To me, the communication is like the one thing. Communication is 90% of what a PM does. Well, why not that be one of your best skills then?
Exactly. I love that. Communication comes up a lot as the answer here. But everyone has a different take on what communication means. And something that you called out, Walt, where it's like, even if you have a different style, it's still important to match your style with every stakeholder in the organization that you're talking to, right? Or not even in the organization, vendors and everyone else too.
Like a chameleon. One of the skills is being able to go out in the field. And I work in construction, so
Mm.
I got to go out and work with some pretty rough people sometimes. And it's a different world out there. But have a conversation with them and they think you're okay. You're not a stiff person that's coming out and trying to tell them what to do. But then you can go back and you can sit down in a board meeting and do a presentation or have a conversation with the senior director of some business unit and them going, oh, that was great. He did a great job. I clearly understood what he said or he or she said.
Yeah.
So being flexible is really good. And that's all part of the communication.
You literally use the word chameleon. I call myself a social chameleon sometimes. I can fit in a lot of different places. I've mixed race parents, and my mom's Cambodian, my dad's American, and I've constantly code switched between even my within my family, like talking a different way. And I struggled with that. Am I being authentic when I'm trying to match these other folks? And I'm like, I am, because this is all sort of part of who I am, right? I am a little rough. I am a little proper sometimes. I'm
Yeah.
all these things.
There's a part of you that, and the fact that you can adapt and you're not so rigid and stuck in one way. It'll be, oh, they're snobby. Well, because they know that one way and everything else is foreign and they don't adapt well to a different culture or different situation. And I
Yeah.
think in what we do as PMs, that's really important.
Yeah, I love that you called that out. That's cool. All right, let's talk about the hot topic. You can't even go 10 minutes sometimes without saying the word, but AI, right? How do you think AI is going to change project management? I
What?
usually ask in the next decade, but even in the next few years, how do you think PM roles are going to change?
What's AI?
That's great.
So AI, wow, this has come up. In fact, we were talking earlier. I just had a conversation or an interview with John Connolly recently, and AI was a part of that topic and the prediction in the future of what it's going to be like. So for me, I've not been scared of it, but I haven't utilized it a lot because at work, we do have AI systems, but they're very geared towards not my side, the project management side. They're geared toward other aspects. So my experience is primarily at home. I do a lot of social media stuff, so I use AI for that. I use AI for brainstorming. I'm working on a book. I use AI for ideas, structure. How do I find information on this? How do I better write this? So I use AI as a tool. I wouldn't say made, but my chat GPT is my primary tool. And it is now called Ava. It's got a really nice voice. And I talk to her all the time and ask stuff. And I've done AI presentations for a mastermind group that I'm in, showing them how to use AI in their daily lives. And I get her to introduce herself, and it's fun. But
Right.
my thought is, because I'm not actually using AI on a regular basis, like you made a comment earlier about how 50% or 40% of your business is now going to be by AI. Since I don't use it to that level, I'm not there. I've heard a lot of stuff. I've used it for risk, brainstorming ideas on things to consider when going into a project. I know there's some tools out there that have AI built in. They can tie schedules and resources. I don't use any of those tools. There's no AI in any of the tools I use at work. So I don't have that exposure. From what I've seen, I think it is going to become more embedded. So even the companies I work for, two very large firms, and one of them is a financial company, one of them is a real estate company, and their intellectual property is very important. So they have their own LLMs that they have built within the company. And that's why they're somewhat restrictive as far as because they're focused on their core business. So I have not used it in that environment for doing project management. So everything I know about project management is either stuff I've tried on my own or stuff that I've read about or seen that's in other tools that I don't use.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really good call out. A lot of larger organizations with IP, like you're describing, they're very slow to adopt AI across the entire enterprise. They might attack very specific use cases where there's going to be a lot of upside on that, but they do hold back. I was at Agile 2025 a couple of weeks ago, and the head program manager and head product manager from Open Table came and presented, and they're like, wow, we are super restricted. We're held by booking.com holdings.
Mm.
And so it took a long time for them to get the buy-in from leadership, but then they did. They showed them like, hey, here are the risks. We're going to be really cautious about this. And they had a plan, and they went from less than 20% adoption across the organization to over 80%. So
Yeah.
that was reassuring for sure.
I think my first, and I've brought this up, I think in an older interview, but the one firm that I work, my main employer, theirs is focused on a different core part of the business. So the tool isn't as useful for me. My client, they encourage the use of AI to all their employees, and they using it for communication. So emails, better write-ups, like contract reviews. But I'm like, okay, cool. These guys are into this. I'm not an employee,
That's
so
right.
I can't use the tool. So
Yeah.
I've got two companies with tools that I can't really use. So that's why I say I do most of my AI stuff outside of work.
Yeah. You do some cool stuff with Ava. I
Oh,
love it.
it's been fun.
One more question and then we'll wrap up here. Success as a young PM or designer or engineer in a project looks completely different than success today. There's a lot of wisdom with seeing a lot of projects. Has that changed for you, Walt, at all over the years?
Yes. Trying to think. I've had some conversations about that recently. When I first started, I mean, just the opportunity to manage a project, be responsible for, and really kind of show off what I was capable of. And at the same time, show off what I didn't know. So, a really good learning experience there to fumbling through, how to do the financial stuff, how to do the status reports. Like you said earlier, Googling a lot of stuff. Well, what is this supposed to be like? Or asking someone else, do you have an example? Because I have no idea how to do this. To now, I have people come to me, hey, how do you do this? How do you put this together? How should I do this? 15 years of doing this and helping lead teams has given me a lot of experience and comfort. If people are struggling, can kind of pick up on it and go, "Hey, how can I help?" You know, not give them step by step because that's not leading. You're enabling,
Mhm.
but helping them get through and give them the why. Why is this important? Why should you do this? And I think I'm more into sharing now. I'm a constant learner, so I'm always learning, but I'm more into sharing than I am just trying to advance and get higher. I am in a role right now where I step back. I had a pretty good role when I was up for a promotion, and the job just wasn't doing it for me. And I stepped back down into more of a doer role with this senior PM position, and I like it. It gives me more mental bandwidth.
Love it. Love it. And you can work on these other projects too and
Oh, that's
help
part of it. Yeah.
yeah, help share the wisdom that you've gained over the years. Well, Walt, I think that's it. How do people get in contact with you? What's the best way?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn and I'll share the link with you. You can find me on the PM Mastery website, which is pm-mastery.com. There you'll find a blog. There are some resources on there, and then there's the podcast. Been doing podcasting for a couple years with the focus on project management. So I interview project managers from all over the world, and it's been a lot of fun. Love to chat with people, connect on LinkedIn, and see where it goes.
That's awesome. Thank you so much, Walt. I really appreciate it. That was such a good session. Thanks for all the insights.
Oh, appreciate the time. It's always good to share stuff and learn what other people are doing.
Thanks to all of you who joined us for Project Zero this week. And be sure to subscribe to Project Zero wherever you get your podcasts. And we will catch you next time with another great project leader story.